The USS Discovery moved through space like a silver arrow cutting through the darkness. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the stars pass by on the main screen. His ship was home to over 300 beings from 12 different species, all working together as part of the Galactic Federation. It was supposed to be a symbol of unity among the stars. Today, that unity would be tested. The transport shuttle docked with a soft thud that echoed through the ship's corridors. Jake straightened his uniform and walked toward the airlock. Behind him, his senior staff followed. Dr. Lisa Parker, the chief science officer, carried a data pad with information about their new crew member. Lieutenant Ben Carter, the security chief, kept his hand near his weapon out of habit. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the medical officer, looked curious about meeting someone from a species she had only read about in textbooks. The airlock door opened. With a hiss, a small figure stepped out, much smaller than anyone expected. Zara was barely 5 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer like crystal in the ship's lights. Her large purple eyes looked around nervously. She wore the standard Federation uniform, but it seemed too big for her thin frame. Jake had expected someone impressive. The Kylorians were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most powerful species. They could move things with their minds, read thoughts, and control crystal technology that other species could barely understand. Their ships were works of art that could destroy entire fleets. Their cities floated in the air above their home planet. This young female did not look powerful at all. "Welcome aboard the Discovery," Jake said, stepping forward. "I am Captain Morrison." Zara bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, Captain. I am honored to serve on your ship." Her voice was soft and musical, but there was something different about it. Most Kylorians spoke with a cold, distant tone that made other species feel small. Zara sounded almost shy. Dr. Parker smiled warmly. "We are excited to work with you. Your people's knowledge of crystalline technology could help us greatly." Before Zara could respond, Commander Vex stepped forward. The tall Altarian had gray skin and 4 arms, each ending in sharp claws. His species was known for their pride and their belief that they were superior to most other races. "So this is the mighty Kylorian we were promised," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "She looks more like a child playing dress-up." Several alien crew members who had gathered to see the new arrival laughed quietly. A Zeltarian officer with green scales shook his head. "I thought Kylorians were supposed to be 7 feet tall and able to crush minds with a thought." "Maybe this one is broken," suggested a Thraxian engineer, his insect-like features twisting into what might have been a smile. Jake felt uncomfortable with the comments, but he did not say anything. Kylorians were known to be able to defend themselves. If Zara was bothered by the remark, she could handle it. But as Jake watched, he saw something unexpected. Zara's shoulders seemed to shrink inward. Her eyes dropped to the floor. She looked hurt, but she did not fight back or show any anger. A normal Kylorian would have used their psychic powers to teach the mockers a lesson. Zara just stood there taking the insults. "That is enough," Dr. Parker said firmly. "Let us show our new crew member to her quarters." As they walked through the corridors, more crew members stopped to stare. Word had already spread that the famous Kylorian was not what anyone expected. Whispers followed them wherever they went. "Look how small she is. I heard she failed all her psychic tests." Why would they send us a defective one? Zara walked silently beside Jake and his officers. She kept her eyes straight ahead, but Jake could see that she heard every word. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, and she seemed to be trying to make herself even smaller. They reached her quarters, and Jake showed her the door controls. "Your room is here. If you need anything, just ask the computer. Meals are served in the main cafeteria, but you can also order food to your room." "Thank you, Captain," Zara said quietly. "When do I begin my duties?" "Tomorrow morning. Dr. Parker will show you to the science labs. We have several projects that could use your expertise." After Zara disappeared into her room, Jake found himself alone with his human officers. Dr. Parker looked troubled. "That was not what I expected," she said. "The crew was cruel to her." "Kylorians can take care of themselves," Lieutenant Carter replied. If she did not like it, she could have done something about it. Maybe she chose not to, Dr. Rodriguez suggested. Maybe she is different from other Kylorians, Jake thought. About this as they walked back toward the bridge. In his 20 years with the Federation, he had met many Kylorians. They were all cold, proud, and quick to remind other species of their superiority. They rarely spoke to humans except when necessary, and they treated most other species like servants. But Zara seemed different. There was something gentle about her, something that reminded him more of humans than of her own people. Over the next few days, Jake watched Zara work in the science labs. She was brilliant. There was no doubt about that. She could understand complex problems in minutes that took other scientists hours to figure out. But she never showed off her knowledge. She never made others feel stupid. Instead, she asked questions and listened carefully to the answers. Dr. Parker was impressed. She has an amazing understanding of how different species think, she told Jake during their daily briefing. Yesterday, she helped solve a problem that had been bothering our Andromedan engineers for weeks. She did not just give them the answer. She helped them see it for themselves. But the rest of the crew was not as kind. Commander Vex continued to make comments about the failed Kylorian. Other alien officers began to treat her like she was not worth their time. Even the ship's computer seemed to respond more slowly when she gave it commands, as if it had been programmed to show her less respect. The human crew members were polite but distant. They did not join in the mockery, but they did not defend her either. Jake realized that they were probably waiting to see how she handled herself before deciding what to think. It was during the third day that everything changed. The ship's communication officer, a nervous betazoid named Krell, rushed onto the bridge with a look of panic on his face. "Captain, we are receiving a distress signal from the Kepler system. It is from the human colony on the fourth planet." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Kepler colony was home to over 3,000 humans, families who had chosen to make a new life on the frontier. "What kind of distress?" "The signal is weak and broken, but I think I heard something about an attack. The last message was sent 12 hours ago." Jake looked at the main screen where the stars continued to pass by peacefully. Somewhere out there, humans might be in danger. His humans. His people. "Set course for the Kepler system. Maximum warp," he ordered. "Send a message to Federation Command and let them know we are responding to the distress call." As the ship changed direction and the stars began to move faster across the screen, Jake did not notice the small figure standing in the doorway of the bridge. Zara had heard the announcement over the ship's communication system. She had seen the worried looks on the human faces. For the first time since coming aboard, she felt something other than loneliness. She felt a desire to help, to prove that she was worth something. She did not know it yet, but this moment would change everything. The Discovery raced through space toward an unknown danger, carrying a crew that was about to learn what it really meant to choose sides. The USS Discovery dropped out of warp at the edge of the Kepler system, and immediately Jake knew something was very wrong. The space around the fourth planet was filled with the wreckage of ships. Pieces of metal and debris floated like a graveyard among the stars. "Report," Jake ordered, his voice tight with worry. Lieutenant Carter worked quickly at his station. "I am reading multiple ship signatures. Most appear to be Drakari Empire vessels, 3 battle cruisers, and at least a dozen smaller ships." Jake felt his blood turn cold. The Drakari were one of the most feared species in the galaxy. They were warriors who believed that might made right. They conquered weaker worlds and enslaved the populations, using them as workers in their mines and factories. "What about the colony?" Dr. Parker asked from her station. "I am detecting life signs on the planet's surface, but they are faint. It looks like they are underground." Carter's face was grim. "Captain, I think the colonists have been taken to the mining facilities." Commander Vex stepped forward, his forearms crossed over his chest. "This is a military matter now. We should return to Federation space and report to command. Let them send a proper fleet to deal with this." "That will take weeks," Jake replied. "The colonists might not have weeks." "They are just humans," Vexy said with a shrug. "The Federation has billions of them. A few thousand more or less will not matter much." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but before he could respond, he heard a gasp from behind him. He turned to see Zara standing near the entrance to the bridge. Her purple eyes were wide with shock, and her pale blue skin had turned even paler. "You cannot mean that," she said quietly. "You cannot mean that their lives do not matter." Vex laughed, a harsh sound that made several crew members look uncomfortable. "Of course their lives do not matter much. Humans are weak. They live short lives and reproduce quickly. It is their nature to be expendable." Other alien crew members nodded, in agreement. A Zeltarian officer spoke up. "Commander Vex is right. Why should we risk this ship and our lives for a few human farmers?" "Because they asked for help," Zara said, her voice getting stronger. "Because they are people with families and dreams and hopes. Because when someone calls for help, you answer." The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the small Kylorian, who had just defended humans with more passion than any human on the bridge had shown. Commander Vex looked at her with disgust. "You sound like them. Maybe spending time with humans has made you soft and weak too." Jake watched Zara's face change. For a moment he thought he saw anger flash in her eyes. But instead of striking back, she took a deep breath and spoke calmly. "If caring about others makes you weak, then I choose to be weak." Dr. Parker smiled and stepped closer to Zara. "That was beautifully said." Jake made his decision. "We are going to scout the planet. I want to know exactly what we are dealing with before we make any plans." "Captain, I must protest," Vex said loudly. "This is foolish. We are one ship against a Drakari battle fleet. We are not attacking anyone yet. We are gathering information." Jake turned to his officers. "Dr. Parker, Lieutenant Carter, you are with me. Commander Vex, you will monitor the Drakari fleet and report any movement." "I want to come too," Zara said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her again. "I know Drakari technology. I might be able to help." Jake thought about it for a moment. Having a Kylorian along could be useful, even if she was not like other Kylorians. "All right, but you follow orders and stay close." An hour later, Jake found himself in a shuttle heading toward the planet's surface. Dr. Parker sat beside him, studying sensor readings. Lieutenant Carter checked his weapons for the third time. Zara sat quietly in the back, but Jake could see that she was paying attention to everything. They landed in a forest several miles from the main colony. The trees were tall and purple, with leaves that shimmered in the light of the system's twin suns. It should have been beautiful, but the silence made it feel like a tomb. "This way," Carter said, leading them through the trees. "The life signs are coming from about 2 miles northeast." As they walked, Jake noticed that Zara seemed to be listening to something the rest of them could not hear. She would stop every few minutes and tilt her head, as if she was trying to catch a distant sound. "What is it?" Dr. Parker asked during one of these stops. "I can hear them," Zara said softly. "The humans. They are scared and tired, but they are alive." "How can you hear them from this distance?" Carter asked. "My people have abilities that go beyond what most species understand. I can sense emotions and thoughts when they are strong enough." Zara looked sad. "Their fear is very strong." They reached the edge of a cliff and looked down into a valley below. What they saw made Jake's heart sink. The beautiful colony town had been destroyed. Buildings lay in ruins, and scorch marks covered the ground where energy weapons had been fired. But worse than the destruction were the massive mining machines that had been brought in. The Drakari had turned the entire valley into a mining operation. Huge metal structures rose from the ground like ugly mountains. Conveyor belts carried rocks and dirt from deep underground tunnels, and everywhere Jake could see the dark shapes of Drakari soldiers with their energy rifles. "There," Dr. Parker pointed to a series of cave entrances that had been carved into the valley walls. "That is where the life signs are strongest." Jake used his binoculars to get a better look. He could see human figures moving in and out of the caves, carrying heavy loads of rocks and ore. Even from this distance he could see that they looked exhausted and thin. 3,000 people, he whispered. Men, women, children, all turned into slaves. "The Drakari will work them until they die," Carter said grimly. That is what they do. They do not care about keeping slaves alive for very long. Zara made a sound that was almost like a sob. This is wrong. This is so very wrong. Jake felt the same way, but he also felt helpless. One ship against a Drakari fleet was suicide. Even if they could somehow rescue some of the colonists, the Drakari would hunt them down and destroy them. They spent another hour watching the mining operation and counting guards. By the time they returned to the shuttle, Jake had a good idea of what they were facing. It was not good news. Back on the Discovery, Jake called a meeting of all senior officers. The ship's conference room was packed with representatives from every species on the crew. Jake stood at the head of the table and gave his report. The situation is worse than we thought. The Drakari have turned the entire colony into a slave labor camp. They have at least 500 soldiers on the ground, plus the ships in orbit. The colonists are being forced to mine some kind of rare crystal that the Drakari prize highly. How long before Federation reinforcements can arrive? Asked Dr. Rodriguez. 3 weeks minimum, Jake replied. More likely 4 or 5 weeks. Commander Vex leaned back in his chair. Then the matter is settled. We cannot possibly mount a rescue with one ship. We should return to Federation space and file our report. In 5 weeks, most of those people will be dead, Dr. Parker said angrily. We cannot just abandon them. We can and we will, Vex replied coldly. That is what rational beings do. They do not throw away their lives for lost causes. Other alien officers began to agree with Vex. The Andromedan chief engineer nodded his massive head. The commander speaks wisdom. We must think of the greater good. What greater good? Zara asked suddenly. She had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now she stood up. What good is there in letting innocent people suffer? The good of not losing a valuable Federation starship, Vex snapped. The good of not starting a war with the Drakari Empire over a few worthless humans. They are not worthless, Zara said, her voice getting louder. Every life has value. Every person down there has a family, has people who love them, has dreams and hopes and fears. How can you just write them off like numbers on a report? The room fell silent again. Jake could see that some of the alien officers looked uncomfortable, but others just looked annoyed. To them, Zara was making an emotional argument, and emotions were seen as weaknesses. But Jake was beginning to understand something about Zara. She was not weak at all. She was something her own people had lost long ago. She was compassionate. I am ordering a rescue mission, Jake announced. We will find a way to get those people out. Commander Vex stood up so quickly that his chair fell over. Captain, I cannot allow you to risk this ship on such a foolish mission. I am relieving you of command under Federation Regulation 7. The room erupted in shouts and arguments. Some officers supported Vex, others supported Jake. In the middle of it all, Zara sat quietly, but Jake could see that she was making a decision that would change everything. The argument in the conference room grew louder by the minute. Commander Vex stood with his forearms crossed, surrounded by most of the alien officers. They all agreed that attempting a rescue was foolish and dangerous. On the other side of the room, Captain Jake Morrison stood with his human officers, their faces set with determination. Between them sat Zara, feeling more alone than ever before. Federation Regulation 7 is clear, Vex said loudly. When a commanding officer makes decisions that endanger the ship and crew without reasonable chance of success, he can be relieved of duty. By a majority vote of senior officers, Jake replied, firmly. And I do not think you have that majority. Vex smiled coldly. Let us see. All those in favor of relieving Captain Morrison of command? Hands went up around the room. The Andromedan engineer raised his massive hand. The Zeltarian tactical officer raised his scaled arm. The Thraxian communications chief lifted one of his insect-like appendages. One by one, most of the alien officers voted against Jake. Then Vex looked at the human officers. Dr. Parker? Dr. Rodriguez? Lieutenant Carter? Surely you can see that this mission is suicide. But the humans did not raise their hands. Dr. Parker shook her head. I stand with the captain. As do I, said Dr. Rodriguez. Count me in, added Lieutenant Carter. Vex turned to look at Zara. She was the only officer who had not voted yet. Well, Kylorian, will you vote with reason, or will you let your emotions cloud your judgment like these humans? All eyes turned to Zara. She could feel the weight of their stares, the expectation that she would side with her fellow aliens. After all, she was not human. Why should she care about human lives more than the safety of the ship? But as she sat there, Zara remembered the past few days. She thought about Dr. Parker showing her around the science labs, taking time to explain human research methods, even though Zara probably knew more about science than anyone else on the ship. She thought about Dr. Rodriguez sharing her lunch in the cafeteria when Zara had been sitting alone. She thought about Lieutenant Carter teaching her how to use the ship's security systems, treating her like a valued colleague instead of a failed experiment. Most of all, she thought about Captain Morrison. He had welcomed her aboard his ship with kindness and respect, even though she was clearly not what anyone had expected. He had given her a chance to prove herself when others would have sent her away. These humans had shown her more genuine warmth and friendship in a few days than her own people had shown her in her entire life. I vote to support Captain Morrison, Zara said quietly. The room exploded in angry voices. Vex's face turned dark with rage. You foolish child. You have spent too much time with these emotional weaklings. They have infected you with their sentimentality. Maybe they have, Zara replied, standing up slowly. But I would rather be infected with their compassion than poisoned by your coldness. Over the next several hours, the ship became divided into two camps. The alien officers, led by Vex, began to make plans to take control of the ship by force if necessary. They gathered in the forward cargo bay and spoke in low voices about duty and rational thinking. The human officers, meanwhile, gathered in Jake's quarters to plan their rescue mission. They knew they were outnumbered and outgunned, but they also knew they had to try. Zara found herself walking the corridors alone, not welcome in either group. The alien officers saw her as a traitor to her own kind. The human officers, while grateful for her support, still did not fully trust her. It was during one of these lonely walks that Dr. Parker found her in an empty observation lounge, staring out at the stars. Mind if I join you? The doctor asked. Zara nodded and Dr. Parker sat down beside her. For a while, they just looked out at space in comfortable silence. Why did you vote with us? Dr. Parker finally asked. You could have stayed neutral, or even sided with Vex. It would have been easier for you. Zara thought about the question for a long moment. On my homeworld, I was always different. Kylorians are supposed to be tall and strong and filled with psychic power. We are supposed to care only about ourselves and our own advancement, but I never felt that way. She paused, choosing her words carefully. When I was young, I would watch other species who came to our world. I would see how they cared for each other, how they showed kindness to strangers. My people called it weakness, but I thought it looked like strength. Dr. Parker smiled. And what do you think now? Now I know it is strength, the greatest strength in the universe. Zara turned to look at the doctor. Your people are willing to risk everything to save strangers. You are willing to die for people you have never met, simply because they need help. How is that weakness? Commander Vex thinks it is, Dr. Parker pointed out. Commander Vex is wrong. His people, my people, most of the species in the Federation, we think that being strong means being alone, being cold, caring only for ourselves. But you humans have learned something the rest of us have not. What is that? That real strength comes from connections, from caring about others, from being willing to sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. Zara looked back out at the stars. I want to learn that kind of strength. Dr. Parker reached over and squeezed Zara's hand gently. You already have it. You showed it when you voted with us. Over the next day, Zara began spending more time with the human crew members. She ate meals with them in the cafeteria, listening to their stories and learning about their culture. Lieutenant Carter told her about his family back on Earth, showing her pictures of his wife and two young children. Dr. Rodriguez shared her passion for music, playing recordings of human songs that made Zara's eyes fill with tears. But it was Captain Morrison who taught her the most. He found her in the science lab late one night working on sensor modifications that might help with the rescue mission. "You do not have to do this," he told her. "If Vex takes control of the ship, you could be in serious trouble for helping us." "I know," Zara replied, not looking up from her work. "But I cannot stop now. Those people down on the planet, they are calling for help. How can I ignore that?" Jake sat down beside her. "Can you really hear them? The colonists?" Zara nodded. "My psychic abilities are different from other Kylorians. They focus on emotions instead of control. I can feel their fear, their hope, their love for each other. Even from this distance, their emotions are so strong that they keep me awake at night. That must be difficult for you." "It is, but it is also beautiful." Zara finally looked up at him. "Captain, why do humans care so much about strangers? Why are you willing to risk your lives for people you have never met?" Jake thought about it for a moment. "Because we know that someday we might be the strangers who need help. Because we believe that every life has value, no matter who they are or where they come from. Because it is the right thing to do. Even when it is dangerous? Even when others call you foolish? Especially then." Zara smiled, and for the first time since coming aboard the ship, it was a real smile. "Then I understand why I want to be like you." The next morning, everything changed. Zara woke up to the sound of alarms blaring throughout the ship. She rushed to the bridge to find chaos. Commander Vex and his supporters had taken control of the main computer systems during the night shift. They had locked out the human officers and were preparing to set course back to Federation space. "You are too late," Vex told Jake, who stood in the center of the bridge surrounded by alien guards. "I have sent a message to Federation Command explaining that you suffered a mental breakdown. They will understand why I had to take command." "You cannot do this," Dr. Parker said angrily. "Those people are counting on us." "Those people are already dead," Vex replied coldly. "We are simply accepting reality." But as Vex spoke, something strange began to happen. Zara stepped forward, and the air around her seemed to shimmer. Her purple eyes began to glow with a soft light that no one had ever seen from a Kylorian before. "No," she said quietly, but her voice seemed to fill the entire bridge. "You are wrong." Vex turned to look at her, and his expression changed from smugness to confusion. "What are you doing?" "I am showing you what you refuse to see," Zara replied, and then she did something that would change everything. She opened her mind and let everyone on the bridge feel what she had been feeling. She shared the emotions of the trapped colonists, their terror, their hope, their desperate love for their families. She let the alien officers experience the human capacity for compassion, the willingness to sacrifice for others, the strength that came from caring deeply about something beyond yourself. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Several alien officers stumbled backward, their faces filled with shock. Others began to cry, which was something most of their species had not done in thousands of years. Commander Vex himself fell to his knees, his forearms wrapped around his chest as if he was in physical pain. "Stop," he gasped. "Stop this." But Zara did not stop. She let them feel everything: the beauty of human emotion, the power of human connection, the incredible strength that came from choosing to care about others even when it hurt. When she finally closed the psychic link, the bridge was silent except for the sound of breathing. Everyone stared at her, but now their expressions were different. There was awe instead of mockery, respect instead of dismissal. The bridge of the USS Discovery remained silent for long minutes after Zara closed the psychic link. Several alien officers stood with tears running down their faces, something they had not experienced in generations. Others looked confused and shaken, as if they had just woken up from a long dream. Commander Vex slowly pulled himself to his feet, his forearms shaking. His gray skin had turned pale, and his eyes were wide with something that might have been fear or wonder. "What did you do to us?" he whispered. "I showed you the truth," Zara replied calmly. "I let you feel what humans feel every day. I let you experience the emotions that you call weakness but which are actually the source of their greatest strength." Dr. Parker stepped forward, her own eyes bright with unshed tears. Zara, how did you do that? I have never heard of any Kylorian having that kind of ability. Zara looked at her human friend with something like sadness. Because most Kylorians have forgotten how to feel for others. We have spent so many centuries focused on our own power that we have lost the ability to truly connect with other beings. But I was born different. She turned to face the entire bridge crew. On my homeworld, I was considered a failure because I could not dominate other minds the way my people expected. My psychic abilities focused on empathy instead of control. I could feel what others felt, understand what drove them, connect with their emotions. My teachers said this made me weak and useless. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been quiet during the entire exchange, stepped closer to Zara. But that is not weakness at all. That is a gift. I know that now, Zara said with a small smile. But it took coming here, meeting all of you, to understand what my abilities really meant. One of the Andromedan officers, a massive being named Korth, spoke up in his deep, rumbling voice. I have never felt anything like that before. The emotions of those humans on the planet, their love for their families, their willingness to sacrifice for each other. It was like touching fire. It was beautiful, whispered the Zeltarian tactical officer, his scaled face wet with tears. I had no idea that such feelings were possible. But not everyone on the bridge was moved by the experience. Commander Vex straightened his uniform and glared at Zara with renewed anger. You used your powers to manipulate us. You forced us to experience alien emotions against our will. That is exactly the kind of psychic assault that the Federation laws forbid. I did not assault anyone, Zara replied firmly. I simply opened a door and let you see what was already there. Those emotions belong to the humans on the planet below. I just allowed you to feel them for a moment. It changes nothing, Vex declared, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. We still cannot mount a successful rescue mission against a Drakari battle fleet. Emotions do not stop energy weapons. You are right about that, Jake said, retaking his position as captain. But emotions can give us the strength to find a way when there seems to be no way. Dr. Parker looked at her scanner readings again. The Drakari ships are still in orbit. 3 battle cruisers and 12 smaller vessels. Even if we had Federation support, it would be a difficult fight. Lieutenant Carter nodded grimly. And we still have the problem of getting the colonists off the planet safely. Even if we somehow defeated the fleet, the Drakari soldiers on the ground would probably kill the prisoners rather than let them escape. Zara had been quiet during this discussion, but now she spoke up. There might be another way. Everyone turned to look at her. What do you mean? Jake asked. My people's ships use crystalline technology that most other species do not understand. But I do understand it. Zara walked over to one of the bridge consoles and began calling up technical specifications. The Discovery has several Kylorian components that were installed as part of the integration program. They have never been activated because no one knew how to use them properly. Dr. Parker moved to look over Zara's shoulder. What kind of components? Quantum phase manipulators, crystalline energy amplifiers, psychic interface matrices. Zara's fingers moved quickly over the controls. With the right modifications and the right psychic operator, these systems could give the Discovery capabilities that the Drakari would never expect. Commander Vex laughed harshly. Even if that were true, you have already admitted that your psychic abilities are focused on empathy, not the kind of power needed to operate Kylorian technology. You are right, Zara said quietly. My abilities alone would not be enough, but combined with human determination and creativity, they might. Bonnie, she turned to face Jake and his officers. Captain, what if I told you that I could link my mind with the human crew members who volunteer? What if I could share my psychic abilities with them, allowing us to work together in ways that have never been tried before? The bridge fell silent. Again. Dr. Rodriguez was the first to speak. Is that even possible? I do not know, Zara admitted. It has never been attempted. Kylorians have always worked alone, never in partnership with other species. But humans have taught me that sometimes the impossible becomes possible when people work together. Jake studied Zara's face carefully. What would be the risks? For me, the risks would be severe. Sharing my psychic abilities with multiple people could burn out my mind completely. I might never recover. And for us? Dr. Parker asked. Unknown. You might experience temporary psychic abilities, or you might be overwhelmed by the connection. There is no way to know without trying. Commander Vex stepped forward aggressively. This is madness. You are talking about an untested procedure that could kill everyone involved. All for a rescue mission that probably cannot succeed anyway. You are probably right, Zara said calmly. But I have made my choice. I would rather risk my life trying to save those people than live safely knowing I could have helped and chose not to. Jake looked around the bridge at his officers. One by one, they nodded their agreement. Dr. Parker smiled. Count me in. Me too, said Dr. Rodriguez. And me, added Lieutenant Carter. Even some of the alien officers who had felt Zara's psychic link began to volunteer. The Andromedan engineer Korth rumbled his agreement. The Zeltarian tactical officer stepped forward. I want to help too. But Commander Vex was not finished. I will not allow this ship to be destroyed by your emotional foolishness, he declared. Computer, transfer command codes to Commander Vex. Authorization Vex Alpha 7. Nothing happened. Vex tried again, speaking louder. Computer, respond to my command. Jake smiled grimly. The computer systems are not responding because they have been locked out. Dr. Parker, would you care to explain? Dr. Parker grinned. While everyone was arguing, Zara and I modified the ship's computer core. The Kylorian technology she activated has created a new type of interface that requires both human intuition and Kylorian psychic ability to operate. Only someone with both capabilities can access the main systems now. Vex spun around to glare at Zara. You planned this. You have been working against us from the beginning. No, Zara replied sadly. I was hoping you would choose to help. I was hoping that once you felt what I felt, you would understand why this rescue mission matters. But you are still choosing fear over compassion, safety over doing what is right. Vex drew himself up to his full height, his forearms spread wide in a threatening gesture. You have betrayed your own species. You have chosen these inferior humans over your own people. You are a disgrace to the Kylorian name. For a moment, Zara looked hurt by his words. But then she straightened her shoulders and looked him directly in the eyes. You are right about one thing. I have chosen humans over my own people, but they are not inferior. They are everything that my people could have been if we had not forgotten how to care about others. She turned to face Captain Morrison. Captain, I formally request permission to renounce my Kylorian citizenship and apply for status as a human citizen. The bridge fell completely silent. In the entire history of the Federation, no alien had ever requested to change species citizenship. It was not even clear if such a thing was legally possible. Jake stared at her for a long moment, understanding the magnitude of what she was asking. Zara, are you sure about this? Once you make this choice, there will be no going back. I am, sure, she replied without hesitation. I have found my real family here among humans. I want to be part of something greater than myself. I want to be part of a species that believes love is stronger than fear. Dr. Parker wiped tears from her eyes. Zara, we would be honored to have you as one of us. But before Jake could respond, to Zara's request, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Lieutenant Carter rushed to his station. Captain, the Drakari fleet is moving. They have detected our presence and are changing course to intercept us. Jake moved quickly to the command chair. How long before they reach us? 6 hours, maybe 7. Jake looked at Zara, then at his crew. It looks like we are out of time for long discussions. Zara, if you think you can give us the tools we need to save those colonists, then let us do it. Zara nodded and moved to the central console. Everyone who wants to volunteer for the psychic link, please gather around me. Remember, this has never been tried before. We could all die. But as she looked around the bridge, she saw no fear in the human faces looking back at her. She saw determination, courage, and something else that made her heart swell with pride. She saw family. The modified bridge of the USS Discovery hummed with an energy that had never existed before in the galaxy. Crystalline formations had grown from the walls and consoles, pulsing with soft blue light that matched the color of Zara's skin. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the center of it all, his hand resting on a crystal interface that connected him directly to the ship's consciousness. Around him, Dr. Parker, Lieutenant Carter, Dr. Rodriguez, and 6 other human volunteers stood at similar stations. Each of them was linked to Zara through the psychic network she had created, their minds working together as one while still maintaining their individual personalities. The sensation was unlike anything any of them had ever experienced. Jake could feel the thoughts and emotions of his crew members flowing through his consciousness like streams of warm light. He could sense Dr. Parker's scientific curiosity as she analyzed the Drakari fleet movements, Lieutenant Carter's tactical expertise as he planned their approach, and Dr. Rodriguez's compassion as she prepared medical facilities for the rescued colonists. But strongest of all, he could feel Zara herself, her determination, her courage, and the deep love she had developed. For humanity, through her connection, he could also sense the emotions of the 3,000 colonists far below on the planet's surface. Their fear had been replaced by hope, as they somehow sensed that help was coming. "Status report," Jake said, his voice carrying easily through the psychic link to every member of the connected crew. "The Drakari fleet is 2 hours out," Carter reported. 3 battle cruisers, 12 destroyers, and about 40 smaller ships. They are moving in standard attack formation. "The colonists are still alive," Dr. Rodriguez added. "Zara's connection shows that most of them are in relatively good health, though they are exhausted and frightened." Dr. Parker looked up from her crystalline console, her eyes glowing with the same blue light that surrounded Zara. "The quantum phase manipulators are fully operational. We can shift the Discovery partially out of normal space, making us much harder to hit while still allowing us to fire our weapons." Through the psychic link, Jake felt a surge of confidence from his crew. The modifications that Zara had made to the ship were beyond anything the Federation had ever seen. By combining Kylorian technology with human intuition and creativity, they had created something entirely new, but they still faced overwhelming odds. "Commander Vex is requesting permission to speak with you," one of the non-linked officers reported. "He and the other alien crew members are locked in the forward cargo bay." Jake sighed. Even with their new abilities, he was not comfortable with keeping fellow officers imprisoned. "Put him on screen." Vex's angry face appeared on the main view screen. Behind him, Jake could see the other alien officers who had opposed the rescue mission. They all looked frustrated and worried. "Morrison, you have lost your mind," Vex declared. "That Kylorian has infected you and your crew with some kind of psychic virus. You are not thinking clearly." "I am thinking more clearly than I ever have before," Jake replied calmly. "For the first time in my life, I can feel what it really means to be connected to other people. I can understand why humans are willing to fight for strangers." "Because you are being manipulated," Vex insisted. "When this madness ends and you are all dead, the Federation will understand that humans are too emotional and unstable to be trusted with important missions." Jake felt a flash of anger, but it was quickly soothed by the calming presence of Zara in his mind. "We will see about that, Commander." The screen went dark, and Jake turned his attention back to the approaching battle. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, he could see the Drakari fleet clearly now. The 3 battlecruisers were massive and heavily armed, each one capable of destroying the Discovery with a single volley. But Jake was no longer afraid. The psychic link with his crew had given him something more valuable than weapons or shields. It had given him absolute trust and perfect coordination with the people he was fighting alongside. "Beginning phase shift," Dr. Parker announced. The ship around them seemed to shimmer and blur as it moved partially into an alternate dimension. To the Drakari sensors, the Discovery would now appear as a ghost ship, visible but impossible to target accurately. "Approaching the planet," Carter reported. "The Drakari ground forces are moving the colonists deeper into the mines. They know we are coming." Through Zara's connection to the colonists, Jake could feel their renewed hope mixed with terror. They knew that rescue was near, but they also knew that their captors might kill them rather than allow them to escape. "We need to move fast," Jake decided. "Dr. Rodriguez, take a team down to the planet. Use the enhanced transporters to beam directly into the mining complex. The phase shift technology should allow you to transport through their shields." "On my way," Rodriguez replied, and Jake felt her determination through the link. The first Drakari battlecruiser fired as the Discovery entered orbit. Massive energy beams cut through space where the ship should have been, but they passed harmlessly through the phase-shifted vessel. Return fire from the Discovery's weapons, however, struck the battlecruiser with devastating effect. The combination of human tactical thinking and Kylorian energy amplification made their weapons far more powerful than they should have been. One battlecruiser disabled, Carter reported with satisfaction. 2 more moving to attack positions. On the planet's surface, Dr. Rodriguez and her team had successfully transported into the mining complex. Through the psychic link, Jake could experience the rescue operation as if he were there himself. He felt Rodriguez's horror at seeing the conditions the colonists had been forced to endure, her anger at the Drakari guards, and her determination to get every single person out safely. The enhanced transporters worked perfectly, beaming colonists directly from the mining tunnels to the Discovery's cargo bays. But the Drakari were not giving up without a fight. Ground forces moved to intercept the rescue teams while the remaining battlecruisers concentrated their fire on the Discovery. "Shields down to 60%, reported one of the non-linked officers. Even with the phase shift technology, some of the Drakari weapons were getting through. Jake felt a moment of doubt, but it was immediately countered by Zara's unwavering confidence in him. Through their connection, he could sense her complete faith in humanity's ability to overcome any obstacle. "All colonists secured," Dr. Rodriguez announced. "We have all 3,000 aboard and accounted for." A cheer went up from the linked crew members, their joy flowing through the psychic network like sunshine. But their celebration was cut short as the Drakari fleet moved to surround them. "They are trying to block our escape route," Carter warned. 47 ships total, all moving to intercept. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had saved the colonists, but now he had to get them safely back to Federation space. Through the link, he could feel the fear and hope of 3,000 people who were depending on him. But he could also feel something else: the absolute trust and support of his crew. Dr. Parker's scientific brilliance, Carter's tactical expertise, Rodriguez's compassionate determination, and most of all, Zara's unwavering belief in the power of love and sacrifice. "Full power to weapons," Jake ordered. "We are going home." What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. The Discovery moved through the Drakari fleet like a dancer, phasing in and out of normal space, striking with impossible precision, and vanishing before return fire could find its target. The human crew members, linked through Zara's psychic abilities, worked with perfect coordination. Every movement was anticipated, every decision was made with the input of the entire group. The Drakari, despite their superior numbers and firepower, found themselves fighting an enemy they could not understand. The Discovery seemed to know their thoughts, to anticipate their movements, to strike at their weaknesses with uncanny accuracy. One by one, Drakari ships fell to the Discovery's enhanced weapons. Those that were not destroyed quickly retreated, unwilling to face an enemy that seemed to be able to read their minds. As the last Drakari vessel disappeared into warp drive, the Discovery set course for Federation space. In the cargo bays, 3,000 human colonists celebrated their freedom. On the bridge, the linked crew members felt a deep sense of accomplishment and joy. But the most important change was happening inside Zara herself. For the first time in her life, she felt like she truly belonged somewhere. She had found her place among beings who valued compassion over power, who chose love over fear, who were willing to risk everything for strangers. 6 months later, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the same conference room where the argument over the rescue mission had taken place. But this time, the room was filled with Federation officials, news reporters, and dignitaries from dozens of worlds. Zara sat beside him, wearing the uniform of a Federation officer, with the insignia of a human citizen. Her request for citizenship had been approved after extensive legal review, making her the first being in galactic history to officially change species membership. The rescue of the Kepler colony has changed everything, the Federation president was saying. It has shown us that the true strength of our alliance lies not in our individual power,